Welcome to the Modern Watchman podcast, where faith meets the front lines of culture.
We break down what's happening in the world, what's behind it, and how believers can stand strong in truth.
We're not here to fear the times, we're here to understand them.
Because being watchmen means staying awake, staying ready, and staying grounded in the Word.
Let's get into it.
Welcome to the Modern Watchman podcast.
With Tom and Wendy. Merry Christmas! We are returning back from the land of, what day is it? It is really remarkable, the week between Christmas and New Year's, or even the week between like the 23rd and New Year's. What?
Nothing.
Because what day even is it? Like, if we could figure out
What day even is it?
If we could figure out the date, that would be one thing, but I still don't even know the day of the week because Christmas is always on different days and it's just a big whack-a-mole. Plus, add in to the fact that Tom got sick today, so that just throws a wrench in the things, but we are back. We are back. We intended to be back sooner, but we are back at the time we are back. And it's now. So I hope you had a very good holiday. We had a very busy time. My sister and her family are living here, which is a gift. And my boys and her boys are just having the most jolly of all times. And it's going to be hard to get back into the swing of post-holiday cheer.
Boys on a farm is just
something to see, something to experience.
Yeah.
Not to mention here in Tennessee, I'm sorry for those of you who don't live here and are maybe experiencing some winter right now. We have fully escaped winter this whole week, which is wild. I hear we're taking a turn tomorrow night back to the winter, but even short-lived, like not too terrible.
Tomorrow, is it still going to be like 72?
Tomorrow's going to be like 74.
Yeah, 74.
It's just insane. Clearly, Jesus is coming back soon.
But in typical Tennessee fashion, it's going to swing 40 degrees and be a high of 34 on Monday, I believe. So.
That's true. Go ahead. I know you want to chime in with joyful Christmas gifts of silver and gold.
Of silver and gold. We have been following on this podcast since the inception, sort of the global monetary situation, and specifically around gold and silver. And
the plummeting dollar and their relationship to one another.
Well, there's so many facets that are involved here, or might be. There's a lot of speculation as
to why gold and silver are
making the runs that they're making. But
let's hear about them.
I think when we first were talking about silver on this podcast, we were talking about it breaking $40, which is a big deal.
That's crazy.
And then its all-time high of $50. And
that's the all-time high it's ever been.
$50.50 or something like that.
Crazy.
And then it is now a few cents shy of $80. So it's in 79.
That's crazy.
Something like that. Crazy. It's absolutely crazy. And
I made a radical prediction that it would hit $100 before we go to Maui, which is in January. And I feel like I am on par to hit this goal.
Well, a lot of people feel like there's going to be a pullback in the price before it keeps going. I kind of fall into that camp, but I don't have a good reason for it.
To the moon is my camp.
I just am like...
It has to. It
just feels like it has to. That it would just keep going nonstop. But one of the big things behind this is China. We've also talked about BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India,
really
China.
Talked about that a bunch, but...
Not a bunch, but we should more, because there is right now, the way that everything is denominated in the system, the global monetary system is in dollars. And it's called the SWIFT system. I forget what that stands for. It's an acronym. But it's the way that countries move money between each other's central banks kind of thing. And it is a United States dominant system, right? Like it's entirely to the benefit of Americans. We benefit greatly from, being the reserve currency of the world. And in whatever year it was that, was it 2021 when Russia invaded invaded Ukraine?
Yeah.
And
Under
Biden, we weaponized the US dollar and seized $300 billion worth of Russian assets, basically money that was held in the New York Fed. And
that's not something we had ever done before against another country.
now we have sanctioned countries left and right, don't get me wrong, but never like that. That was a massive move. The thing about the dollar being the reserve currency is that there's a few things that are kind of necessary to it remaining, or why it has been the reserve currency is, one, American dollars work anywhere in the world. If you bring if you whip $100 bill out of your pocket in the middle of Africa, that person will recognize what it is and that it's good money. You know what I mean? There's nowhere on the planet that people don't recognize American money. You know what I mean?
I don't
like
know
the US
that I would
dollar.
recognize many other monies, frankly.
Around the world, you mean?
Yeah, I know the British pound and I know the euro, and
I guess what I'm getting at is it's universally acceptable.
No, that's interesting.
Even if you're in a country that's like, oh, we don't use American dollars, like
they'll still take
they
it.
know it's worth. Yeah, they know it's worth something. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like they know it's worth $100, and also that it is, what's the word? It's free. The word escapes me, the correct word, but I mean, it's kind of a the word is escaping me right now. I'm sorry, but basically, drug runners use American dollars. Like criminals use American dollars. It's unfettered. Like it's a safe currency to use no matter who you are, good or bad. And it is not weaponized. And when the Biden administration basically told the world, if you cross us, we will turn your dollars off. And again, now I'm not saying Putin's a good guy, but that sent a message to good people and bad people that if you ever end up on the wrong side of America,
or the wrong side of that particular president at that moment,
at whatever, you could have your dollars turned off, basically. Yeah. And that sent a shockwave through the system. Now, to those people, Fox News watchers, CNN watchers, you may or may not have heard about that. But on the global financial system, the players that are involved in that, it was an absolute game changer. Now, Putin has been going around for basically the last 20-something years, quietly trying to gain momentum on another system besides SWIFT. And I forget when BRICS actually officially kind of like became a thing, but
it was like 2022. It was almost an immediate response to the Biden administration.
Well, I'll tell you, I had been reading about it for years and years and years before that. But what it needed, we played right into his hand in that
they needed a catalytic.
Historically, when you shun the American dollar, or the American dollar as a reserve currency status for your nation, you typically end up getting bombed or invaded.
Like you get invaded, or a new president. Congratulations.
There's a long list of people who that has happened to, or nations that has happened to. So when Putin was going around, because I'm telling you, this has been a pursuit of his for a quarter century. When he was going around in the early 2000s, mid 2000s, talking to people, other nations about this, they were like, well, the dollar ain't that bad. And we also don't want to cross the United States and end up on their, naughty list. So he had a really hard time recruiting.
Sure. other countries.
Building an alliance there. Now, as we have been more and more reckless with our debt, with the value of the dollar, because when we inflate our dollars, we're inflating everybody else's dollars that holds American dollars. And between the mismanagement of the dollar as well as the weaponization of it, it made for the perfect opportunity for Russia to build some rather robust alliances in that realm really quickly. And needless to say, Brazil, Russia, India, China, I think it's Saudi Arabia even, which is wild because
Really?
don't quote me on that, but I want to say like Indonesia, Iran's on there, Iran. There's so many countries on it now. Now they're not all that big, but like I want to say more than half the world's population is on BRICS now.
Interesting.
And while it's not more than half of the world's wealth yet, so we're catching up to silver and gold here. So while we have a fiat currency, the American dollar, fiat means it's not tied to anything. It's paper.
Monopoly money.
It's fake money that we have trust in because we have trust in it. And now obviously our dollars used to be backed in gold, silver, and then eventually nothing.
Well, they're backed in petrol, or they're backed in like the reserve currency status. That has been the thing that we've extended it against.
There's memes going around that show like a United States Navy carrier strike group, and it says, "This is what my dollar's backed by." And there's a lot of tongue-in-cheek irony there because the meme is actually like a serious meme. It usually runs in the circles of the like Ivy League banker types that believe in our current monetary system. But the irony is that like that it's literally just muscle and violence
is what forces the countries to participate.
That keeps the American dollar what it is.
And you know what happens when that's the situation is you're going to have to use that muscle and violence at some point.
Well, and
slippery slope.
It inevitably ends up, collapsing. Every fiat currency that's ever existed has. They average about a 250-year run at best. Now,
a fiat currency averages a how long?
Actually, I don't even want to say it averages. I believe they don't last longer than 250 years.
There's no way.
We haven't been a fiat currency that long.
I don't even think they've lasted. I think it's like 100 years.
Well, we also haven't had a currency like ours in a time like ours, where we had the financial instruments and technology to
print our own.
To do what we have done with it was not possible during the Roman Empire, things like that. They had to snip coins, you know what I mean, in the Roman Empire, and we can literally just like print money digitally with zeros,
Bring us to the gold and the silver.
So BRICS, China has done a couple things. The BRICS nations have been loading up on gold.
Smart.
Because when they launch a currency, they have a plan to have it be backed by or pegged to gold.
Smart.
And that's the only way you can launch a competitor to the dollar, basically, is it's got to be...
It can't be fiat.
Yeah, the rest of the world doesn't have enough carrier strike groups to have a fiat currency and say, this is what my dollar's backed by. So they have to actually have a real currency.
Yeah.
And they have been loading up on gold.
I'm in.
Well, it's funny because while I do not agree with Vladimir Putin or Xi Jinping or whatever his name is of China, I do not agree with them at all. I do agree with their current monetary policy.
Absolutely.
If that's the only thing we agree on. And
it's an important one.
I mean, it's not enough to be fully on their side. You know what I mean? That's for sure.
It will be soon enough.
Well,
it will be compelling reasons soon enough.
Yeah. And that's a whole nother discussion there that we could go down the road of what the United States will do to vilify real money when they're up against that.
They're already trying to get rid of pennies and
Oh, they are.
real
But
coins.
so not only have BRICS been buying gold like crazy, the precious metals were typically traded in the London, it's called the LBMA. I forget what it's called, what it stands for, but that's where metals were traded on a stock exchange, so to speak.
Okay.
Now, the West has mostly traded metals on paper, meaning
like the stock.
no actual metal changed hands. You could just buy silver,
like certificates, like stock.
but you never took delivery of it.
Sure.
Right? And
Are you talking about the stock market? Like in the stock market?
It's the metals stock market,
Okay.
if you will.
Yeah.
And they really almost never, it's called taking delivery, like actually took
Get
the physical.
physical.
So they were actually able to create, basically you can sell more imaginary silver. You can sell as much imaginary silver as you
Right.
want, but only about 800 million ounces are mined every year. And there's something like basically
Globally?
we're running at like a deficit basically where we're not barely mining enough
For what we need.
to fulfill the demand. But then on
Are
the
you talking about industrially? You don't even mean
silver is mostly an industrial
right, but you
metal.
don't even mean to keep up with whatever additional demand there might be for people who actually want to physically hold silver. That's
Well,
not
that's
even
us very,
considering that.
believe it or not, the physical holders of silver are
Is
very small amount
right,
of
but
silver.
hypothetically, if silver keeps doing what it's doing, more people, and the dollar keeps doing what it's doing, more people might move to that, which of course would add to the demand, which we can't accommodate that demand
Right.
at current.
Well, and what people got really upset about for 50 years, this was extremely frustrating to people, was the banks basically could keep silver artificially low
Yeah.
by basically selling more fake silver. There was the reason why prices go up, right, is because there's more demand than there
You
is
say
supply.
fake silver, you mean like representative
Paper silver.
Yeah, like
That's a better way of putting it. Paper silver. So the reason why prices go up is when there's a greater demand for something than there is a supply for it. And if you can just keep selling paper silver, there's really no supply issue ever. Well, that bothered a lot of people. It bothered people who were producing silver. It bothered people who were
holding
silver. You know, well, in China, they just literally in the last year, they opened a new exchange in Hong Kong. They're calling it the Shanghai Gold Exchange, but I believe it's kind of based out of Hong Kong. And it's like entirely based on physical silver. And they are basically circumventing and just destroying the London exchange as we speak. And
Crazy.
they're going based off of, you want to buy silver, you have to, or I'm sorry, you want to sell silver, you have to have it. You want to buy silver, you have to take delivery kind of thing. And it's off of a supply and demand situation. And it's
silver and gold, all metals?
All metals, yes.
Okay.
But it might be the repricing that we're seeing is the realization of the actual price of silver.
And what would you guess is the actual price of silver? We don't know.
Well, we're all about to find out. We're all about to find out. That's the crazy thing.
It's 100 by mid-January, I'll tell you that.
But what's interesting is on top of that, and this is just a little bit of news. I don't know if it's boring to people or not, but China also came out and said China produces about 150 million ounces of silver every year. They have banned the export of silver.
Wow.
So no silver is leaving China. Like, that's not entirely true because China might use it to build products that they sell to the world, but they are not selling the silver to American manufacturers or to European manufacturers. They are.
Were they previously?
Yeah, I don't know how much, but they mined 150 million ounces worth, which is a substantial amount of the world's 800 and so million ounces. So is this
also interesting, or is it related to Trump's desire to get mineral rights from these various countries? I mean, is this an answer or an anticipation to
I think
this sort of stuff?
There's a lot of things. So in the technological front, I think there's some jostling going on, definitely for critical mineral type stuff in what they know is coming in the robotics realm, in the I just read an article today about a solid state battery that is going to have like a 900 kilometer range. It's going to change the whole issue with electric cars. It's like a tenth of the size of the current batteries that are lithium based. And long story short, but it uses a kilogram of silver, 2.2 pounds of silver in each battery. I don't know if like more than one battery is required for these cars, but basically it would have a huge demand for silver, but it would also be a breakthrough product. Well, and mind you, silver is the most conductive metal in the periodic table kind of thing. It's the most conductive metal that we are aware of. So when things sensitive, high-end electronic equipment uses silver.
Is there a scenario based on this sort of revelation or revolution in robotics and such? Is there ever a scenario where silver could outpace gold, could become more valuable than gold?
That's hard to believe, but it is important to understand that gold and silver, and even I blur the lines on this, but like they are not the same.
Right.
Gold is an industrial metal. It is used in a lot of things.
But not nearly to the extent. So my question really has more to do with the potential massive increase in demand.
It is theoretically possible that if there was a technological breakthrough of something that required silver in mass,
it could certainly close the gap a lot more.
Right. So, for example, silver is instrumental in solar panels as of the current technology.
What is gold used for?
It's used in chips. There's gold in iPhones.
Okay.
And now, granted, it's a very, 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 very small amount. And also, silver is used in very small amounts, but like it does add up. I believe there's silver in iPhones. There's a lot of silver is used in like weaponry. All of our smart bombs and our missiles.
But what is gold used in?
That's a good question. I'm not
like. Is it primarily just like
gold
jewelry and like that sort of stuff?
Gold is primarily a store of value. So like most of the world's gold.
It's just worth something because it's worth something.
It's because it's just
feels fiat-y. Feels fiat-y.
It is stored in vaults as
just a fancy thing.
Yeah, basic. I mean, well, I'm talking about like
because pirates wanted it, we should want it.
Well, gold is an interesting thing in that it is unchangeable. You drop a gold coin in the ocean, a Spanish galleon sinks 300 years ago. You go down to that shipwreck and you find the gold, and that gold will not be
tarnished.
It will not have deteriorated at all.
Okay. Do other metals deteriorate?
Some do, yeah. They oxidize, rust away.
Oh, they just rust away entirely.
Oh, yeah. Well, think about how metal shipwrecks rust away slowly.
I suppose.
So gold is like...
crazy.
It is a metal and that is special in that way that it does not deteriorate and break down.
That's why God chose it for our streets.
That's good. But that was pretty funny, actually.
Yeah. I know you don't want to laugh hard because you're going to cough.
But yeah, gold has intrinsic value for a number of reasons, but most of it is stored in central banks as a store of wealth.
Okay.
That is what gold is primarily.
That's so funny.
Used for, to my knowledge. But it's interesting because we've seen a huge run in gold, a huge run in silver.
More of a run in silver.
And I do think that it is definitely partly a debasement element where the dollar is losing value.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that. I think there are elements in regards to like the new Shanghai Metals Exchange that is changing the way metals are traded to a more honest and real way. Yeah. And there are some geopolitical just
factors
there in relation to some technology breakthroughs that may or may not be around the corner.
So there's a lot of reasons. It's not just the dollar collapsing. There's other factors. Because obviously when you see something like, if you're me, and you see the silver taking off the way it is, it's like, oh crap, is the dollar collapsing faster than I even realize right this minute? Like, are we eminently at that point? But to hear you talk about these other scenarios, maybe, but also there could be a number of other contributing factors.
Well, I will say this. The BRICS thing, they're kind of all connected to the dollar collapsing, because BRICS
they're all pulling the plug on it.
Is like
we're pulling at the
a
plug.
Tiger just getting ready to pounce. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And as the weakness of the dollar continues to show itself, BRICS just launched its currency. It's doing like test runs kind of thing. They're slow and methodical about it. But see, they're backing their financial system with gold, fundamentally. So it's going to be sound. It's going to be BRICS is.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So I feel like in a lot of ways they're just
BRICS are. BRICS is.
Anyway, they're just waiting for that moment where we show enough weakness.
Yeah.
And the truth is that we know if we do not radically change our ways as a nation, spending $2 trillion more than we bring in.
We're not even trying to change our ways.
So what I'm getting at is Putin and the BRICS group, they know that we're just a few years from having
swirl in the drain,
from showing major vulnerability.
Or having to get into a freaking war. I mean, that's like literally.
Well, it's very likely that there will be a war over this because, again, what backs our dollar right now is guns. So I would say there's a good chance we don't go down without a fight, which is scary in and of itself.
Yeah.
But I would say...
How do you have a war if your dollar's hyperinflating? Like, what does that even look like? Lord Jesus, come back.
I can't speculate on that at the moment. I haven't really thought about that a whole lot. But it did kind of do that in World War II, believe it or not. That's what we were talking about the other day.
Our dollar?
There was actually a huge amount of inflation during World War II.
That's right.
We were talking about how that's not really a story you hear about for World War II. It's just so focused on the battles and all the other stuff. But it is, I guess what I'm saying is it's inevitable that the dollar's coming down to this BRICS system. Now, there's also a lot of talk about like what the West has up their sleeve, some stable coin, some blockchain, some central bank digital currency, blah, blah, blah. Who knows? But I personally...
Will it have Trump's name on it?
Would bet on sound money and going... I feel like we're going to try to perpetuate our debt-based fiat system as long as we possibly can. And meanwhile, the laws of nature, the law of the universe kind of thing, is BRICS is going to come in with stability and sound money
and win
when we're most vulnerable and win, because that's... It's just
how the cookie crumbles.
People will want that in a moment of crisis. That's when gold wins historically in humanity's timeline. In crisis, gold wins every time.
So in that way, is it helpful, without giving financial advice, to have it?
It is. I think so. I'll tell you this. I just heard that not J.P. Morgan Stanley came out. So it used to be they had like a 60-40 investment recommendation of 60% equities, 40%, bonds, and these are for their high-end multi-million dollar clients, right?
Okay.
So 40% super safe, 60% slightly more pegged to the market itself. They've changed that to 60-20-20. 60% equities, 20% bonds, treasuries, and 20% metals.
Fascinating.
That's a
physical or paper.
I'm sure they're
papering.
A lot of those people. Well, I'll say this: they might. financial advisors always recommend paper because they don't make money off of physical.
Yeah.
But I promise you,
Remember that, everybody.
people that are that wealthy know enough to know that
You
they'll
need the
probably
actual
take
thing.
some of that 20%
In
in physical to whatever degree. Maybe some of them take 5% of it, 10% of
Yeah.
it, whatever, who knows. But there is no replacement for physical
Right.
metal.
For sure.
They are still different. But yeah, I mean, it's just a really interesting time
Yeah.
to be paying attention to this stuff. And
It would be a bad time to not be paying attention.
I went in kind of wrapping this subject up. Yes, like to some degree, look at what the big money's doing, and look at what, and even in our own little ways that we can, it is getting harder and harder because, these things that gold was, less than $2,000 an ounce just a few years ago. It was within reach of most American families to pick up an ounce or two.
Yeah.
And silver was 20 something dollars just a few years ago, and now it's 80. Gold's now 45, 4,600. But it's one of those things, it might be one of those where this is the cheapest it'll ever be.
Yeah.
And this is the strongest your dollar will ever be from this point going forward. So if it seems like a lot, just know that this is the cheapest gold will likely be in the big picture, and the strongest your dollar will ever be going forward.
Buy any dips.
Yeah, and I'm just not personally, and this isn't financial advice, it's just what I'm kind of doing, is I'm training myself to get over that sticker shock of like,
I paid cheaper before.
yeah, because I bought silver at $30, you really hate paying $80. You know what I mean? But I'm just going,
I'll be happy to have paid $80 when it's $150.
I also bought it at $15, but then I bought it at $30. That was hard. Well, I don't regret buying it at $30 when it's at $80. You know what I mean? I bought it at $40 thinking, oh, this is, I don't know if I want to do this. I don't regret that at $79, So it's training myself to get over that part of like, oh gosh, is this, but that's the thing. Don't buy it all at once. You know what I mean? If you just consistently, that way you're not all in at one price point. You're in a little bit here and a little bit there and a little bit there.
Okay. We're pivoting. We're pivoting. And by request, we're answering a topic as best we can. Several people have actually reached out asking for clarity, or rather our thoughts, because that's often all we can give you is our thoughts and our limited understanding, although our intentional understanding. And that would be the concept or the idea of what does the Bible say about Israel as God's chosen people, and where do they stand today? Also, what is Israel? Like, what is Israel according to the Bible? I actually have a whole research topic here already that I have pulled up previously, so you can search that. A little bit of a history lesson. And again, I am not a theologian. I did not go to Bible school. I do intentionally read and study the Bible daily, yearly, all the time. I lead a Bible study, which of course, email me at Wendycunningham at protonmail.com. And
Proton.
I'm happy to, I'll look it up in a second.
Okay.
I am happy to add you to our Read the Bible in a Year group. Starts January 1st. I also have a Bible study I run virtually. We meet twice a month on Zoom. If that's something that you're interested in, I highly, 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 highly encourage Christians and otherwise to be in their word regularly. I cannot stress how critical it is as we near Jesus's awaited return to know the word of God. It says so many times throughout that we will be deceived if we don't know the word. There will be people, there will be false prophets, there will be false messengers, false teachers, false teaching, and that we will fall away from what is true, desiring teachers that will give us what we want. All of that is prevalent and happening in and out of the church, even to Christians. So Be in your word, learn history, go figure this stuff out for yourself for sure. But I figure it out by listening to other people that I respect. So I appreciate the question, and I appreciate that people desire to know our thoughts on it. I do want to give a little bit of a history lesson, again, as far as I understand it, in the Bible. So if you go back to Genesis, the first 11 chapters of the Bible are foundational and critical for understanding the rest of the Bible, including the New Testament. So much happens in the beginning of the story that sets up the rest of it. And so in the beginning, which are the first words of the Bible, we learn about Abraham, and he is called by God and told to leave his people or leave his family and go to a land that God will show him. So he doesn't tell Abraham where he's going. He just says, I need you to follow me and trust me. And his name is Abram. It later becomes Abraham. So if I switch back and forth, they're the same person. Abram generally obeys. He does take his nephew and his father, so he doesn't leave his family entirely behind. That does become a sticking point a little bit in the story, but this is kind of a funny introduction to the half obedience of God's people, which includes the Jews, and it also includes the Gentiles. The Gentiles would be those of us who are not Jewish by genetics, okay? So Jews, Hebrews, Israelites, those terms can be used interchangeably. They kind of are used, the Jews are initially called Hebrews, then they're called Israelites, and I'll get there in a second. Today they're called Jews. Again, these terms are kind of interchangeable. It's just when they're referred to, at what point they're referred to, those names really has to do with historical reference, but we're speaking of the same group of people. So Abram is known as the father of the Jews. He is the father of Judaism, and Christianity is birthed from him. Abraham, or Abram, is also the father of Islamic religion, Muslim religion. The Arab people come from Abraham. And this happens because, and this is all relevant, I promise, this is your history lesson. Abram, his wife is named Sarai, and she later becomes named Sarah. So let's refer to these people as Abraham and Sarah. Okay. They're married. They're very old when God enters their story, or when God calls Abraham. And they do not have any children. And when I say very old, I think Abraham is 80. Sarah might be 70. So well past childbearing age, even though at that time people lived a whole lot longer. They're still past childbearing age. God tells Abraham that he will have children. And another 10 years go by. They do not have children. They're getting older, of course. So Sarah actually has the brilliant idea to have Abraham sleep with her maidservant named Hagar. And any children that would be born of Hagar would be legally Sarah and Abraham's. And so Sarah thinks this is obviously what God must have meant when he said we were going to have children. Now, of course, we know that no, God meant covenant marriage. The child that will be born from that covenant is the child of promise. Well, Hagar does get pregnant and she has a son, Ishmael. Ishmael is Abraham's first son, the first child. And historically speaking, customarily speaking, the first child is, the first son in particular, is favored, is more prominent, gets more of the blessing of the inheritance, etc. However, this is not the first time or the last time that God will not follow that custom, and he will not give the firstborn son the preference. He breaks this tradition several times in Genesis alone. So in this case, although Ishmael is the firstborn son biologically, he is not the son of promise. Abraham, about another decade later, does have a child with Sarah. Sarah is now very, very old. Abram is very, very, very old. They have Isaac. Okay, Isaac is the child of promise. One, because it's from the covenant marriage. Two, because Isaac is then later promised by God that he is carrying the covenant that God made with Abraham. So God tells Isaac that. Isaac ends up having children of his own, of course. He has twins, Jacob being the second born male. Jacob will get the preference over Esau. Jacob has his name changed to, here we go, Israel. Jacob / Israel is promised by God again directly. You are carrying the covenant promise of Abraham. So why am I beating this dead horse of where the covenant promise is coming from? Because it's not Ishmael. Ishmael is the first biological boy, but yes, that's true, but he is outside of the marriage. Ishmael is the son that all of the Arab people come from. So Islam, the Islamic religion, will eventually come out of the line of Ishmael. Okay, so Muslims claim Abraham as the father of their religion. Ironically, so do the Jews. This is why there is historical hatred and infighting amongst these people groups in the Middle East, even to this day, because there has, of course, Ishmael thought he was the promised son, and all of his lineage believe they are the original promised son. And of course, Christians and Jews believe that Isaac is the promised son. Now, I believe there's lots of scriptural evidence that say, and I've already pled that case for you, that Isaac is in fact the one carrying on the covenant, because God directly says that. And of course, Jacob, who becomes Israel, is the carrier of the covenant promise. Okay. Israel is a man, right? Jacob becomes Israel. Israel is a man. Israel ends up having 12 sons. They're called the 12 tribes of Israel. This group of people become the people that dwell in the promised land, which is geographically today Israel. So Israel is actually a genetic people group, but it is also a place on the map. However, when we talk about Israel and the covenant people Israel, we're not actually talking about the place on the map. We are talking about the people who initially dwelled in that place. The funny thing about it is biblically prophetic that Israel would become a state again, that the promised land would be re-inhabited by the Jewish people again. That happened in what, 1946, after World War II.
48 is when
48? Okay, thank you.
Became a state.
Yeah, Israel became a country again. And the Jews, essentially, that had been displaced were basically given that land again to be their homeland. Now, again, it is geographically where the original promised land was that God gave to the Israelites. So yes, it is the actual place that God desired for them to be. But when we talk about Israel, we're talking about, from a biblical context, we are talking about the genetic people group that originally come from Abraham, descend through Isaac, descend through Jacob / Israel, the man. That genetics is Israel. Okay, so that is the history lesson, first and foremost. There is a covenant that is made with Abraham about his descendants before he even has Isaac, before he has a single child. God makes a covenant with Abraham. It's a very important covenant that I believe, and I would say the Bible supports, is ongoing to this day. And that covenant, the reason why I believe this is, when God makes the covenant with Abraham, he says, I am promising to make you a father of many nations, many people. You will have as many descendants as the stars in the sky. I am essentially choosing your descendants to be my chosen people. God is saying this to Abraham. This is in Genesis 11, maybe? No. Genesis 8 or 9 or something like that. You'll have to look it up. Early Genesis. He makes this covenant with Abraham. The significance of the covenant, the uniqueness, I should say, of the covenant is that God puts Abraham to sleep when he makes the covenant. Now, when you made when you swore an oath, like I'm talking about in these times, you would sacrifice an animal.
Is this the covenant with Noah?
No, the covenant with Abraham.
Okay.
Try to keep up, Tom. I haven't even said the word Noah.
Sorry, but there's the covenant with Noah, and you said Genesis 8 or 9. I didn't know if you were confusing them.
No. Tower of Babel, it's already too late. No, Abraham came before Noah. Nope, that's not true.
Right.
Maybe it's after. Maybe it's 13, 14, something like that.
Yep.
Okay. Abraham is put to sleep. Okay, I'm sorry. When you made this sort of oath, you would sacrifice an animal, you would cut it in half, and you would literally walk a figure 8 around through the sacrificed, separated into pieces animal. And the significance of doing that would be, if we break this vow, let what happened to this animal happen to us. That's the significance of making this like visual representation of a vow, is that we're promising till death do us part, so to speak. Ironically, death do us part. Get it? They're in 2 parts. See what I did there? So what's significant or what's unique about this covenant is that God puts Abraham to sleep, which is to say Abraham can't do his part of the covenant. He can't walk between the animal and swear his side. So the uniqueness of this covenant is that God is saying, I will do both sides. I will do my part and I will do your part. You cannot disqualify yourself from this covenant, is the significance of what God is saying by putting Abraham to sleep. The Jewish people, Abraham's descendants, cannot mess up enough to get out of the covenant. That's the significance. God is doing both parts. He is upholding both sides of the agreement. Okay? To me, this is like so very clearly how the Jews are not replaced. So there's a school of thought called the replacement theology that says we, the church, the Gentiles, post Jesus, are now God's chosen people, and the Jews are out. They're not, unless they themselves accept Jesus. Now, don't mishear me. There's no way into heaven other than through Jesus. The Jews do not get a free pass into heaven just because they are the chosen people. I do not believe that. I don't believe that's scriptural at all. However, there is an ongoing covenant that is not yet broken that runs parallel to the new covenant of Jesus that applies to the Gentiles. We are grafted in. That's what the scripture says. Gentiles are grafted in to the original covenant. That's how we are chosen by God, so to speak. But grafted in means, like, I always think of grapevines are grafted.
Well, that's literally the metaphor
Symbolism.
that God is using is
there's
a vine.
An original, and then there's a new one grafted to the original.
It's an added to.
It's added to. It is not in replace of. We are grafted into the promise. So these things now run congruently. The original Abrahamic covenant with the Jewish people, that they are the chosen ones of God. And then us, the church, the Gentiles who have accepted Christ, we are also chosen by God, but we are not replacing the Jews as God's chosen people. We are separate. We are called the church. We are called the saints in Scripture, okay? We're not called the chosen ones. We're called the saints. In the New Testament uses that language. So all that to say, the Jews are still the chosen people of God. Now, I believe that becomes very relevant as we move towards end times. Again, I do not think that God is just going to pluck the Jews into heaven and they don't have to accept Christ. I don't believe that they're going to go unpunished for having not just ignored Christ, but sacrificed him and killed him. They're going to face God's wrath. I do not believe the church, us, the Gentiles, those who believe in Jesus, will face God's wrath. Again, this is my theology. I can give you the scripture for it if you want. But again, there are lots of brilliant minds that disagree with what I'm saying to you as far as end times go, eschatology. That is, we can talk about that. That's separate. So what is yet to come is what I'm talking about. End time prophecy is called eschatology. That is what I'm referring to right now. I believe the church will be plucked out by way of the rapture, and the wrath of God will be seen and felt here by primarily unbelievers and Jews, which are essentially unbelievers. That is going to be part of the fulfillment of God's covenant promise to that special group of people. Now, again, they're not special because they're special. They're special because God chose them. They're different and unique because God chose them. That does not mean that they are infallible. That does not mean infallible. That does not mean that they are without sin. That does not mean that they are saved. Okay? So let's bring that to today. What do the Jews mean today? How as Christians are we supposed to think about the Jews? This is where we get into stuff like what Tucker Carlson has been saying and falling out of favor with the church. And I would say Tucker Carlson is actually, he's not wrong on everything he's saying. I think he is wrong on some of the things that he is saying, but he is not wrong on everything he's saying. We as Christians have no loyalty to the government, this very, very secular government that happens to be in charge of the physical location of Israel on a map. Is that fair to say it that way?
Say that again. We have no loyalty to.
We have no loyalty or allegiance as
biblically
Christians.
speaking.
Biblically speaking, we do not owe our allegiance or loyalty to the secular government of a location on a map.
100% agree with that.
We don't. So when we talk about we have to be allies with Israel, as a matter of fact, biblically speaking, there are plenty of times where Israel is actually judged and punished and disciplined by God by way of falling out of favor with its allegiant governments, like its neighboring governments or its neighboring countries or its neighboring people groups or whatever you want to call them.
The Bible is full of, it's almost the through line of the story of the Jews is Israel their
doing it wrong,
disobedience, the consequences, their return to obedience, and then shortly thereafter their disobedience.
That is the entire cycle over and over and over and over
mind
and over
you,
again.
Was it? I mean, and also their commission. I mean, again, I'm not looking to overly condemn the Jewish people, but like they're just as fallible
absolutely
as anyone else. While they can be God's chosen people,
right.
They are. Their story is actually, the story. The Old Testament is also the story of humanity, right? Like we keep
all are this way.
Messing up. Yeah. God's grace covers it. He has to be the one to cover it. That's why he sent his only son to die for our sins. But
he also punishes it
again
and again and again.
There are so many examples of the Jews or Jewish leaders committing
atrocious,
horrible
crimes.
Acts, up to and including, was it not, what was the king, Herod? Is it Herod?
There's Herod.
Herod. That said to kill every child under the age, every male under the age of 2
when
because
Jesus was born.
When Jesus was born. That was a Jewish king. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So again, I would like to think that as Americans, if the Jewish prime minister...
Was he a Jewish king?
I think so.
No, I think they were under Roman rule. But it was a king. I'd have to look that up, but that's just one example.
Again, yeah, definitely.
When you look at the years in like 1st and 2nd Kings through 1st and 2nd Chronicles, it chronicles, that's the name, all of the Jewish or Hebrew kings through that time. There is a very short list of good kings and a very long list of evil, rebellious, disobedient kings that end up in like the most extreme atrocities and up to and including child sacrifice, and that is viciously judged by God. And do you know how it's typically judged by God? The Israels are overthrown by another country. That is almost always how God initiates his punishment and redirection, is he has to leave them destitute and desperate for him again. That's the cycle. So to say that as Christians, we have to align entirely with Israel, especially Israel's government and every choice they make, is really a dangerous theology, as a matter of fact. And it is certainly not biblical. And now we are commanded to pray for peace in Jerusalem. Now, I think that we should do that. As a Christian, I will tell you, I think that
we got to come back to this Herod thing in a second. It's really interesting, but go ahead.
Okay, I pray that the Holy Land is preserved. And I do know that if that area, if the geographical location that is Israel were to be taken over by Muslims, every holy site would be destroyed, and there would be no way to prove archaeologically that the Bible is true. Now, I don't know if you know that, but you can go and stand at these holy sites where Jesus did his miracles, where these different cities were, where these different, biblical locations were. I've been told, I've never gone, I've been told, like Jesus's grave as an example. It is a beautiful leap for a Christian's faith to stand in the places historically that Jesus stood, that these miracles happened, that these things took place. That would most certainly be eliminated, and it would be much harder to prove archaeologically that the Bible is real if Muslims were to take over that area. So I do pray that there is a way that God can realign his people without us having, as Christians, having to lose that. But that's not a biblical argument. That's just something that I pray for as a Christian, and I think is important, although not important to risk American lives defending. I would go so far as to say that. But yes, it is often, it's always how God disciplines the Jews is through them falling out of favor with neighboring people groups and being conquered and being exiled and being persecuted and being taken out of their land. That's how they had the ability to come back to their land, because they had been removed from it. So it's strange how wildly off Christians can get. And this is when I say that Tucker Carlson, I think he goes a little bit too far. I think he wanders away from the Bible in the wrong direction, but he is not wrong when he says that Christians do not have to have a alliance or a loyalty or an allegiance to the secular government that is of a geographical location. That is not true. We are to pray for the Jews, the Jewish people. We are to pray for peace in Jerusalem. Is there any other scriptures I'm missing that give us specific directions as Christians regarding the Jews? Because it is a very short list, as a matter of fact. There is not a huge list of things that we as Christians are supposed to be doing regarding the Jews.
Yeah, I couldn't find what you had, but I was just typing in
what do
some
you
other
want to
ones.
say about Herod?
Oh, it's interesting. Herod was not ethnically Jewish, but he was a Jewish convert. And he was not popular with the Jews at all because he was kind of like appointed by Rome. I just find it interesting because Bibi Netanyahu is wildly unpopular in Israel, believe it or not. Like, they've been on like the brink of...
Who is?
Netanyahu, Bibi Netanyahu.
Is wildly unpopular. Got it.
So it's interesting, like Herod was wildly unpopular. And while he wasn't ethnically Jewish, he was a Jewish convert. But I just find it interesting because we have all these Americans by the state of Israel's propaganda machine that owns or has massive influence, owns or vicariously owns the mass media system that has gotten millions of Americans to believe that we have some greater responsibility to support the government of Israel. Meanwhile, at home in Israel, Bibi Netanyahu is like a hair's width away from going to prison for the rest of his life and is wildly unpopular. There's the whole like, it's always nuanced. It's not black and white the way we are fed it, that you're just all in for Israel or you're an anti-Semite. It is not that. I can want the Jews to be able to live in peace in Israel, and also not support them conducting a genocide. That's not crazy.
We absolutely should not support that.
It's not crazy for me to say that and here's the thing, I will distinguish between Jewish people and the government of Israel, right? I'm not accusing all Jewish people of conducting a genocide. The truth is, the state of Israel, the institution, is conducting a genocide. So that's as non-anti-Semite as I can get there, in saying that it isn't Jews that are doing it, it's the state of Israel. And I don't have to support that. It's so mind-numbingly brainwashed to have a sold-out support for the state of Israel and not be able to comprehend that the state of Israel and God's chosen people are two different things. One is not representative of the other. And if you really dig into...
I was like, we can go off another deep end.
Go for it.
Well, we've kind of touched on a little bit about like who is even genetically
Jewish.
Connected, Jewish, going back up to Abraham. Like, that's what we're talking about when we say the chosen people. We're talking about people who came from Abraham through Isaac, through Jacob / Israel. That line, those genetics, again, the covenant being with Abraham, that's specific genetics we're talking about. Like, we're not talking about converts into the religion of Judaism. We are talking about DNA.
You know what's interesting is, so Herod came from Esau.
Oh, interesting.
Which is Jewish, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So even though, but not of the 12 tribes.
Right.
Right? Does that make sense?
Correct.
It's a funny thing there.
It is a funny thing there. He's not in the covenant because the covenant is reestablished.
Yes,
Abraham,
at that point.
Isaac, and Jacob. And it says that again and again throughout the Old Testament, like, I am the God of your father meaning your lineage,
right? Jacob,
Isaac, and Abraham. Or vice
I thought
versa.
that was interesting.
That is interesting.
But yes, the Jewish people, to dive into it a little bit deeper, there's kind of three sects of Jewish people. I don't know if sex is the right term or not, but groups, ethnic groups of Jews. The Ashkenazi, which came from like Eastern Europe, the Sephardi, which I believe came from like Portugal, Spain, and the Mizrahi, I think.
I don't know. Which
come from the Middle East. And I say come from. The Jews were dispersed over hundreds of years, and they were exiled for whatever reason. They were kicked out of their country. They fled persecution, who knows? But they moved around. The irony is that actually a lot of Palestinian people might actually have Jewish genetics in them, while Ashkenazi, Zionists, so to speak, are reconquering the state of Israel, taking Gaza and the West Bank, I'm sure will be next, they are actually like, Wendy and I were talking about how genetically it's very, very likely that these are basically the Palestinians are ethnic Jews, Jewish people, descendant-wise.
Possibly.
A portion of them. Obviously, it's not going to be over hundreds and hundreds of years. The same way that Ashkenazi Jews, their genetics are diluted by Hungarian, Lithuanian, Romanian, all
Jews
the areas.
Have their genetics are so diluted by now.
But basically that the Palestinian genetics very well have large subsets of Jewish DNA, so to speak, because many of the Jews that stayed in quote unquote Palestine, Israel, that geographic area that didn't flee were forced to convert to Islam. I forget when exactly it was, but basically if you stayed in the Holy Land as a Jew, it was conquered more than one time. And many of them were forced to convert to Islam. So it's just interesting that like what we have in modern day Israel is to a great extent, you have European Jews exterminating Muslims of Jewish descent, but genetically speaking, they're probably pretty darn close.
It's wild.
It's really a bizarre thing.
And it would be exactly what Satan would do. Like, this is what's so, like when you look at the history of obviously all the persecution of the Jews or of Christians, like, of course that is the case. Of course, like, and perhaps I'm wrong here and you can tell me, like, is there historical persecution of Muslims?
No, they're pretty good at persecuting.
I mean, I don't know that there is. I don't. I mean, maybe that's because I'm a Christian or I'm an American and I just haven't learned that history.
I mean, are you talking about 1,000-year history?
I'm talking about, yeah.
Because I mean, I would say you could argue.
Of course, there is some. There would have to have been some. But as a religious group, I don't think so. Not like there has been historical, unprecedented persecution of Jews and Christians. Like throughout time, obviously Jews being much older in the history books than Christians, just wild. It's wild when you look at history and go, well, of course, like Satan has been coming for them since the jump, since the first covenant. He's been trying to disrupt the Jews. He's been trying to, he got them to kill their own savior, right? Like he has played into, ironically, prophetic hands in making things come to be that need to come to be in order for all the world to be saved. Because if Jesus was never killed, none of us would be saved.
I would say I'm grateful.
I'm glad. I'm glad.
I needed the saving.
The enemy overplays his hands. He does that. But of course, he would be sowing all kinds of confusion and deception and disillusionment in the Jewish people from as far back as he possibly could. Of course, that would be what he would be doing. So I find it funny. Not funny. Possibly terribly, terribly tragic that the way this could be going. And again, when we as Christians get overly blinded, I guess, by we are just as propagandized as anybody else. Like we can't think of ourselves as being above persuasion or above manipulation. Of course not. So like, yeah, when we look at things very black and white, when we don't get into the nuances of scripture, when we don't know history, then it's easier for us to go, oh yeah, of course, Israel's our biggest ally. Like as Christians, that has to be the case. It's like,
well, and I would even say the way that the church handled over the last 25 years, some of the social issues, right? The transgenderism, the men and women's bathrooms, the men and women's sports. And in a lot of ways, we had this like stay out of it mentality, and didn't really stand up for truth the way, and I'm saying Big C church as always. We have to, it never works out well. The the enemy takes the ground until we put our foot down and don't let the enemy take anymore. Is that fair to say? Until Riley Gaines stands up and says, this is wrong, and starts standing on the truth, nothing changes, right? And, we ceded ground and gave ground and gave ground. And I would say that we have our obligation to Israel as Christians is to stand with them as brothers when they are in the truth, and call them out as brothers when they're not. It is not our job to support their evil acts or give them a blank check of support because of some, distorted biblical view. That the Christian thing to do is to love them as a brother, where you would tell them the truth. And the truth right now is not keep doing what you're doing. And there's, unfortunately, Charlie Kirk laid out a vast amount of the case for, Jewish donors were behind all of this neo-Marxist stuff in America, where they were pushing these agendas that we don't know exactly why, but they were. And that doesn't need to be supported. We all know that. But then if it comes, how can we not call that out and say, that's wrong and they shouldn't do it and we're going to stop it? And it's just a matter of calling it how we know it to be, holding them accountable just like any Christian brother.
Yeah.
Loving them like any Christian brother, holding them accountable like any Christian brother. To me, it's that simple. Right. And they can do the same to me.
For sure. Well, just to kind of wrap it up, I did pull up some verses like in Genesis 12:3. This would be a compelling verse for someone who might argue that we're supposed to, stay in alliance, I guess. This would be the closest thing I could find scripturally that would argue that point. The verse is, I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse, and all people on earth will be blessed through you. He's speaking to Abraham. Okay, so yeah, we're not supposed to curse the Jews. That's for sure. And, we will be blessed through them. We have been by Jesus, that's for sure. Psalm 122 is a call to pray for Jerusalem. Like I said, that is a direct call for us as, any believer of the word of God. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. May those who love you be secure. We see lots of references in the New Testament that speak to God's ongoing covenant with the Jews, that it's still here, that we have not somehow replaced them as God's chosen people. Romans 11:1-2 is Paul talking. He says, I ask then, did God reject his people? By no means. I am an Israelite myself, a descendant of Abraham from the tribe of Benjamin. God did not reject his people whom he foreknew. He goes on to argue that point, not just in Romans. He argues it, pretty lengthily. So is that a word? In Hebrews 6:13-17, he talks about God's covenant promises to Abraham, Israel, how they're enduring and unchanging. Romans is chock full. It speaks to Romans 11:17-18. But if some of the branches have been broken off, and you, through a wild olive shoot, have been grafted in among the others, now share in the nourishing sap from the olive root, do not consider yourself to be superior to those other branches. If you do, consider this: you do not support the root, but the root supports you. Speaking of the original Jewish covenant, is supporting, not replacing, the covenant that we're grafted into that covenant. Let's see, anything else that's really compelling?
I mean, I think that in summary, we are not replacement.
We're not replacement.
What is it called? Replacement theology?
Yeah, replacement theology. I just don't really think that's scriptural. I mean, I would love for somebody who disagreed to make their case. Absolutely.
They can make their case, but I think there's I think it's nuanced. It's again, all the time. It's just not quite what one side says it is and not quite what the other side says. It's what's our current relationship with the state of Israel is not the same discussion as whether or not Jews are God's chosen people. Like that's two separate discussions. So God's chosen people are the Jews. The old covenant and the new covenant coexist and are still and will continue ongoing. And the state of Israel is not the same as the Jewish people. It's not automatically representative of God's people.
Correct.
So those are
certainly not the government's decisions are not representative of the Jewish people.
Two separate elements there that can have sort of different discussions. And
even Paul, like as he has a heart to persuade the Jews to Christ, when they turn their back on him, he's like, all right, bye, I'm going to the Gentiles then. Like, you know, he doesn't stay like, no, I will continue to beat this dead horse. Like, there's a hope and a prayer for Jews to come to salvation. That still exists. We should still have that. But sometimes, and I don't mean this like in a hypothetical sense, I mean this in a historical sense, sometimes the only way the Jewish people are brought to God is through their own punishment by way of falling out of favor with allies. I know I've said that, but I'm saying it again.
So we can be...
We also know that happens in the end time.
We can be covenant theologists and say, get your $100 million of AIPAC money out of our Congress, and your foreign aid is going to be slashed to zero.
So long as you be acting crazy.
And we can do that. We can have those
and
same...
still be Christian.
And we can still be good Christians.
And still pray for the Jews and hope for their salvation and know that God is sovereign and that he's over all of this. And God would never want us to just blindly follow them around wherever they would lead us. That's for dang sure. So those are our thoughts on the Jews and God's chosen people and Israel. And it's nuanced, just like anything else. It's not all one way or another, like we're saying. It is nuanced. So there you go. Questions, topics, thoughts, disagreements, all of it is welcomed. You can find us on the gram, or you can Wendycunningham at protonmail.com. And I will happily listen and continue to address. But we so appreciate your support and the topic ideas and the questions. I'm honored by it. So thank you. I hope this was helpful. Thanks for joining us on the Modern Watchman podcast.
Remember, truth isn't just something we believe, it's something we live out every day.
Stay alert, stay discerning, and don't lose sight of the hope we have in Christ.
Until next time,
be watchmen.